Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Tonight we're going to do, I think Mike said this is going to be called Shot in the Ass, or Ass Shot, or something along that line. We're going to do a little SHOT Show recap. We didn't go. I have no desire to walk around something that big in Las Vegas and get COVID 25 and whatever else is going on. So but we've been kind of trying to follow along, just seeing stuff on social media here and there about some of the new products, and we are going to talk about I think generally each of us is going to talk about 3 products that we like and 3 products that we think are kind of dumb. And with that, maybe not dumb, you may really like those products, but things that we think are kind of silly or we're not really interested in. So, and some of them may just be outright dumb, because I guarantee you there's a lot of really, really dumb stuff there that people are going to spend money on. So, we'll get started here. Does anyone want to go first?
I can. Do we want to just go with, do we want to do one of each, or just go with one we like first, or?
Yeah, we'll do around the horn. Each of us will do one each, and we'll do our 3 that way, and then we'll get into the, this is kind of stupid, and we can obviously interject into each other's after we're done talking about it. So
Right. I'm gonna go with kind of a weird one for me, maybe. Canic actually released a new version of their MC9, their meat, which was their they released it about a year and a half ago, the full size, and then they did the MC9, which was their compact. Well, now they have the MC9 Prime. They're kind of going the way of SIG, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. But this little pistol looks to be a pretty good competitor with the P365 macro kind of thing. It comes with a compensator already on it. It's the stack and a half. You guys know I love all things Canic. I do love their pistols a lot. This has got the rival trigger in it. It's got the upgraded trigger. It's got all that stuff. It was a pretty quiet announcement. Like, it wasn't necessarily one of the big flashy things that we see, because at the end of the day, it's just another striker fired pistol. But I like that Canic is moving in the direction of the integrally compensated. It's optics ready. You can get it with their optic already mounted on it. I think the pistol with the Canic enclosed emitter optic already on it. So basically, you order the gun, it comes, everything's already mounted up. It comes with a holster and 3 mags and all that stuff in the box. I think they're saying MSRP is going to be around like $900, $850 to $900, which is for an out of the box carry gun with an enclosed emitter dot. That's not a bad deal, really. So yeah, I think that's worth mentioning. And I know that, like I said, it's a little weird because I'm not a 9mm guy, but it's definitely something that I would encourage everybody to look at least if you're in the market for a new carry pistol.
Yeah, that sounds decent. I know the I don't know about the macro. I know the P365 XL, which is what I've got. Those are $650 or something like that, usually
Right.
$600-ish out the door. So you throw a $300 optic on it. I think the macro is a little bit more. They're probably like closer to $700.
Yeah.
You throw a dot on it, and yeah, that's a pretty fair price. I do like the direction these companies are going with. A little bit thinner guns. They're a little bit easier to carry. And all of us here have carried full-size guns. So it's not that you can't carry a full. I mean, I carry my staccato on occasion. But having said that, the little thinner, I mean, my XL, I got 15 rounds. So basically Glock 19, but it's thinner and easier to carry. And the length of the grip and everything, it's not quite like shooting a 19, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, it's not like shooting the old school pocket guns that were, I had a Car CW9, and it shot good, but it was a little jumpier, a little harder to handle than like a a compact like a G19. So it's a good direction I think the industry is going in, and that sounds like that may be a decent option.
Yep.
All right, Mike, you want to go with your first?
Well, I guess I'm not going to be too special. There's going to be a lot of me out there. I'm very excited and interested by the new pistol that Staccato has shown us. The other guys have known that for about a year now. I've gone back and forth about maybe wanting to do 2011. I tried to build up an M9 to kind of scratch that itch because, 90s kid, grew up with all the 80s and 90s action movies. You got to have some sort of M9 platform. And I've enjoyed that thoroughly, but it still just hasn't scratched that 2011-ish itch yet. So I considered, okay, do I want to do a Stealth Arms Platypus, the aluminum frame? I would probably never shoot it out, but at the same time, not necessarily super excited about that. And, but because I've been in the Glock ecosystem so long, I've just got an unbelievable amount of Magpul and Glock magazines for 9mm. And so I almost pulled the trigger on getting a Staccato in the fall. I thought to myself, I'm going to hold off because we don't know what optics might be released at SHOT, and that could affect footprints. I might see something in a footprint and wish that I would have gone a different route. And I'm glad I held off because I think this new Staccato is going to check a lot of the boxes. The traditional 2011, very functional for running gun, but drop safe is always a little bit of a concern with Series 70s guns. It matches like running gun, where guns are potential to get impacts and other things are probably higher than like a USPSA or a 3-gun type match. And so I don't have any Series 80, anything like that right now. The chance that they actually pulled off a decent single action Series 80 fire control system, and it sounds like they've done a lot of their own stuff. It sounds like they're wired EPM, cutting the parts instead of doing MIM. So it sounds like they're going to address it the traditional 1911, 2011 Series 80 could have had, with some of the changes in the design, the tooling to make it, the actual materials. So I think that with the 4, the initial reports that I saw were that it's fast running, very quick to return. And then the 4.5 is also interesting with an actual sight tracker or island barrel with a block on the end. And I'm excited for that because there's a good chance that could be ported, or there could be a compensated model at some point, which with no gun classes in running gun makes a lot of sense. At the same time, just having that weight, it sounds like from the initial reviews from I saw people shooting and handling it, that it still makes the gun feel like it's cycling fairly soft. So while I might not be a first gen adopter of this new Staccato, there's a good chance that maybe in 2025 or 2026, after we see some more reviews, we hear some people that get some pretty high round counts on them, that I might be taking one to a running gun. So that's kind of the first thing that I saw and kind of raised my eyebrows and was kind of excited about. It takes a lot to get me excited about something at this point. So next I'll move on to
No, Mike,
One at a time.
we're doing one at a time.
we're doing one at a time. Oh, I thought
You
we were
didn't.
doing one day, one day. Okay.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't notice that Tiger only said one thing and then we moved on.
He was playing with his Night Force. He wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I know.
You're the one that invited the ADHD kid.
And then no one else. You didn't give anyone else a chance to comment on it either.
Yeah.
So
you're gonna just say that the P is the best, and Tiger's gonna say
no.
can't. So
It should be 10 millimeter. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Go on, Tiger. Give yours real quick, and I'll give my thoughts after you.
So actually, I'm gonna kind of repeat what Ryan said earlier about kind of the direction that some gun companies are going. I've said for years that a gun company that would build a really, really nice pistol and then let it use Glock mags would sell buku's amounts of guns, because mag standardization is an incredible thing. I've said that, we need Glock mags, AR-15 mags, AR-10 mags, and AICS mags, and all the other mags need to go away. Like that's just my opinion for new production guns. So I'm really excited that Staccato is kind of following Stealth Arms, probably improving on it some. I've handled the Platypus; they're fantastic. I hope to handle one of these Staccatos. Maybe Mike, whenever he buys it, he'll let me drool over it a little bit. But I'm excited to see some common sense coming into that, because me and Mike, we've talked about it a lot. There's a lot that goes into gun ownership beyond just the gun, and if you've got to buy 10 mags at $80 a piece, that's a whole nother pistol. Whereas if you already have 35 Glock mags or whatever it is, yeah, right, holsters, all the things, but in this particular instance, mags specifically, I hate spending money on magazines, because I would rather just buy calibers that I already have magazines for. So go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, when the first drawings things kind of was released and we didn't have all the info, I was a little skeptical on some things, because one, when I heard it took Glock mags, I was really worried that it was going to have a Glock grip angle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the world. People shoot Glocks fine. If you're a Glock shooter, you may think that's great. I would say most of every other gun except for Glock generally has the same grip angle as a 1911.
Yeah.
So, I mean, within a degree or two, and then Glock is a good deal different. So, that was a concern I had. Apparently that's not. It's the same grip angle as a regular 1911, 2011. So, that's one concern. My second was, okay, it's drop safe. I think that's awesome. Is it a brand new system that they came up with, or is it Series 80? Well, they've come out and said it's Series 80. Those have never been known for being the best triggers, but as Mike said, it sounds like they've gone through it and done their thing to make it a good trigger. From all accounts, I've heard it's basically the same as the P. I've got a P. It's a duty trigger. I guess maybe if there's a downside, if you buy one of these guns and you want to get it down to a 2-pound trigger or something like that, like a real race 2011 or something like that, I don't know that that's going to be that's not going to be in the cards for you. I think if you've not shot a 1911, 2011 trigger, the actual movement of the trigger is so short. Like, you've got kind of initial take up. That's basically just the trigger shoe moving. And then the actual trigger pull is so short that, in my mind, the difference between a 2-pound and a 4.5 pound is not really that great, because your fingers moving so small that straight back motion is just different. So I think the Series 80, it sounds like they made a really good trigger with the Series 80. So that's awesome. Maybe the only concerns I have out there left, so they've changed the frame, which is fine. It's the frame's different on a lot of guns. The slide is now actually thicker, which is how they're able to mount, optics direct on it without a plate, which the Platypus does. That's a smart idea. The sight is in front of the backup sights in front of the optic, which is how I prefer it. It's how it is on my Staccato. My concern is holsters. If that slide is a lot thicker, it may not work in your standard Staccato holsters. So I don't know. I'm sure Safariland or someone will have one come out, but right off the bat, that may be a little bit harder. I'm not so hot on I've got a bunch of Glock mags, but I don't really care if my gun can take Glock mags or not. Part of me thinks, couldn't you take all this R&D and figure out how to make a 2011 magazine cost the same amount as a Glock magazine? You know what I mean? you can buy an M&P mag, steel mag for $20, but I still got to pay 60. I mean, the Prodigy mags are a little bit cheaper, but like you spend all this R&D to reinvent the wheel instead of just saying like, I get you like Glock mags, but your Glock mags, they say it's for industry or for the police and military, or the police, the police or whatever.
Yeah.
I just say you've got an armory full of worn out Glock mags that you want to use with this. Just buy our gun that takes 2011 mags, and I can sell you 2011 mags for cheaper than a factory Glock mag, and I guarantee that that maybe would have been a better choice. But
you're fighting bureaucratic inertia, Ryan.
and that's the case. That's absolutely the case. But still, can they make them a little bit cheaper than $70? Because that really is a kick in the nuts.
I agree. I agree.
I am far too poor to own a 2011. So I own one, but I'm not yet, but I'm still too poor. All right, so here's my poor coming out. My first choice, and again, when we're talking about this, guys, we've not got hands on any of this stuff. This is our we're really interested about this and hoping it's good. The Sig Sauer Tango MSR 2-12 is my first choice. I am a fan of. I'm not a huge Sig Sauer fan. It's funny.
I am.
That I like. Yeah, it's funny that I like the P365 because most of their pistols, I could care less about their pistols. Their rifles, I'm sure they're all great. I don't really care. Like they don't really do a lot that I like, but their optics, they seem to do different. I got two Tango 4s, like the original Tango 4s, and they're great. I've never had a problem. So a couple things that this MSR do right off the bat is now this is a fairly cheap optic, so I'm hoping the glass is good. That would be the big thing. It's a 2-12, which for medium power variable optic I think is right in my sweet zone. For a first focal plane optic with most reticles, 2x is like I can still shoot with both eyes open, big field of view, really easy to shoot. 2-12s, the 6x, you tend to have a little bit more generous eye box, which is what I think one of the real benefits of an MPVO is, besides getting a little bit extra zoom when you need it. Obviously, this is scope design specific. You can make a really narrow 6x, but if you got a 10x or you got a 6x, generally it's easier to be able to have a little bit better eye box in the same size, scope, and everything else. Just fit physics. I could have Tiger explain it, but that's just the reality of it. So generally a little better eye box with a little bit more zooms of the zooms. The other thing I really like, so locking turrets, zero stop, and the turrets are really, really short. If you got an MPVO, you're probably going to run an offset or an extra dot. That's kind of become the thing. A lot of these MPVOs and even LPVOs, the turrets are so tall on them, it's really hard to get a dot that sits up above that. And if you do, I mean, we're not talking chin weld anymore. Like we're like resting this on our chest to see it. Less than ideal. So the general package from the pictures I'm seeing looks pretty compact. Looks, fairly small. It's got a 44 millimeter objective lens, which is decent size. You should have a pretty good field of view. Looks interesting. The MPVO market's kind of thin right now. There's not a lot of really good choices. I mean, Leopold does have some. Their reticles are not real great so far. I think they may have a new one coming out. The reticle on this is just a plain mil dot. I'm not in love with. It's not like blowing me out of the water, but it certainly looks usable. So it could be worse. But I'd like to get my hands on one. I think, and looks like it's got illumination too. So I know it has illumination. I did see that. So I mean they've got a strong contender if they can put decent glass in it. So Mike, you got anything to add about that?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. Some of I've had the SIG Tango 4 in the past, the 4016, and I absolutely loved it. But the downside was it had fairly tall turrets, and it was only a 4016. And for a lot of what we're doing in matches for running gun and some of these like two gun or carbine oriented matches, you're seeing restrictions at the top end of like 10x for a class, or if you're going to run a 16, you might as well jump to something that's running like an 18 or a 20 for the top end, because a lot of those scopes are about the same size and weight. So the glass on that SIG was very good. It definitely batted above its price point. I was a little sad to let them go, but they just didn't really have a home on any of my guns anymore. With this new SIG rifle scope, I feel like it's looking to fill a void in the market. We've had a lot of discussions with people who are constant commenters on the show, friends of the show, admins for the running gun group, and pretty much everyone feels that there is a place in the market for an MPVO, but most of them currently available have serious shortcomings when it comes to the reticle. And so the fairly simple mill reticle that's being offered with SIG's illumination should be pretty good, and it should give you a simple but usable reticle at distance. Ryan had brought up the Loophole 2-10, and they had gotten an updated reticle, and that was actually going to be an honorable mention for me later on because I like the new reticle. I think that they did a pretty good job with that. The downside of that and why it became an honorable mention is, number one, Loophole scopes MSRP is already pretty pricey. I have never purchased a Loophole scope that was not severely discounted or secondhand. That's kind of a big bummer. And Loophole is very, very proud of the illumination on their Mark Vs, often adding like $500 on the MSRP for that option. And those scopes on the secondary market normally are pulling like a $300 premium over the non-illuminated models. So thumbs up the Loophole for creating a usable reticle, the one that should have been in the first place. Thumbs down for Loophole's crazy pricing. And so SIG, good job with bringing something to market that is probably going to have mid-pack glass at a decent price point, and I think it's probably going to serve that section of the market well. So, and you know, I brought up competition, but honestly, 2-12, that is, with that reticle, that really belongs on most hunting rifles, I would say. I would say your 2-12 is the modern version of our Grand Plus 3-9. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
You're muted, Ryan.
Yeah, we got no audio.
All right. I'd say 2-12. You're rarely at 12. So I don't want to get the idea that like these are like great long, like I still think these are AR-15, like Mike said, like hunting scopes. What you get with an optic like this is the ability to see in the shadows, to see into a little bit difficult to view situations, which is why there's kind of a question about the glass, because you still need to have decent glass in this. But being honest, the glass quality has come up so much, and even in cheap scopes. I mean, I have an Athlon 2-12 that's in the same price range, which, like I said, I'd love to compare the two, because the glass on that thing is not as good as some of my higher end scopes, but very, very usable, and it's hard to complain about. So, Tiger, add anything you want about that, and then you can go on to your next like.
Okay. Well, you guys are going to get a chance to play with one because I ordered one earlier today. It dropped at one of my distributors. It actually comes with their mount, like the MSR Alpha mount or whatever. is involved in the price. And I thought, you know what, for the price point, I'm building this little shorter arc rifle. This is going to be a really good option for that. That's going to, see some competition, but also probably hit the deer woods. Yeah, I'm really excited, and we talked on both of the priors about the trends in the industry. I'm really kind of happy with what SIG Optics has done. I bought a Tango 6 big optic I put on my RPR when they first came out with SIG Optics. Actually, it 7 years ago. I just had the memory pop up on my phone yesterday or the day before. And they were trying to compete with the high-end Vortexes and the Night Forces and the Leopolds and all that, and they had the price range. Well, they didn't have the name for the quality. And about 2 years ago, they redid their entire line and pivoted to these mid-range, really high glass quality, but maybe you don't get all of the features that you want, although this one really does check off most of my boxes. And you talk about the reticle. That's actually my favorite reticle ever. It's a basic T that's MRAD. I like it because you have the whole top half of the scope for field of view. You can find stuff in that, and then it's simple. You're not going to get lost in it. But they've moved on. They've moved into this. I don't know if you would call it tier 2 because the build quality is still really high, but tier 2 price range, I guess. And I'm really excited to see. Like I said, I ordered it today. Hopefully it'll be in later this week, and I'll be able to do maybe a short review on it after I get some range time on it or something. And we'll kind of go from there. So my second is actually going to be I'm going to talk about another scope that I'm excited about. Burris is released a new version of their XTR. It's called the XTR PS. And it is a few years ago, there was a company called Revic that did a PMR, which had a whole HUD inside of the scope. And the big thing with the Revic was it was dial to distance. So you input your ballistic data in an app on your phone. It communicated with your scope, and then say you ranged something at 822 yards, you just kept dialing up until the little numbers in your scope said 822. Burris has released their own version of that, and also it has some environmentals and angles, and it's a whole screen, right? It's a whole thing just in the top third or top quarter of your scope. It looks pretty neat. It's going to come in a lot cheaper than the Revic did. They have 2 models of it they're releasing. They have a 3 to 18 and a 5 to 25. I don't know if I will ever buy one. I don't know if I will ever, whatever. But I'm excited to see that kind of integrated tech start coming down in price. Is kind of where, and I'm curious to see, because I'm a Burris fanboy too. I love Burris optics. They're built really well, especially for the price, usually. And I've got several of them that I've beat the snot out of and haven't broke yet. So I'm excited to see where this goes. It's I think we're still on kind of the bleeding edge of where this technology is. I don't think it's worth, I don't necessarily recommend going out and buying one right now and being an early adopter, although it may work out really well for you. But I think definitely within a year or two, we're going to start seeing a lot more digital integration directly into the scope and keeping the scope in that classic, not having a big bulky box on top of your rifle. So.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not so hot on all the electronics and stuff yet. I think
Right.
some of that comes from working on my job. I am using cutting edge technology every day that works when it wants to, and
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know that I want
I
to
get the
bring
same.
that home.
I get GPS and construction
Yeah.
equipment. I'm like, sometimes it's just easier to turn the computer off.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little bit of a Luddite, so smash the looms or whatever. But it is very cool the direction it's going, and I'm curious to see where that stuff goes. So, Mike, share anything, your thoughts on that, and then you can go on to your next, like or hot.
Yeah, so I had a Burris XTR. It would have been an XTR2, 3 to 15, and I picked that up probably around 2015, and really that was a fantastic scope. At that point, you had Leupold Mark IVs to compete against. You had Viper Gen 1s. I mean, you're talking about your zero stop was putting shims under the turrets.
Right.
And the XTR2 at the price point was really ahead of its time. It had a very simple slit turret design with a zero stop. Glass was very good for its price point. 34 millimeter tube when a lot of companies were still doing 30 millimeter. And I think Burris has just continued to quietly push. The XTR3, while it didn't make a really big splash, I know that it did end up on some PRS guns and out there in the competition circle. And I had even looked at it. I just ended up with Lupo Mark V, didn't pick one up, but it was certainly on my radar, something to look at. With this, it looks like Burris is continuing to push quietly ahead. I think it'll be interesting to see the reviews and the results, and it'd be interesting to see if they bring some of this technology into the LPVO and NPVO world. That's probably the next step in their evolution, is if they can pull that off. But very interesting to see what happens. While I don't have any Burris optics on any guns right now, I'm certainly not scared of them, and they're definitely normally in the top 3 or 4 searches that I'll do when I decide I want new glass or something, just to see if they've got something that checks the boxes. So
All right, Mike, go on to your next hot.
alrighty. So, like many guys around my generation, I'll admit I went over to a buddy's house, even though I didn't have a game system myself, and played Call of Duty. And what was one of my favorite guns? The ACR. Now, I have wanted an ACR since I was probably like 15 or 16. There's a couple Grail guns that I had. And one of them, when I was around 16, was I read an article in like Combat Arms or something where the Brits had just adopted the LMT. And I was like, hey, I need one of these. It took me like 10 years, but I did land one. And it's a Grail gun. I've really enjoyed ownership of it. And in the back of my mind, I've still always wanted an ACR. What Bushmaster did to that Magpul rifle is criminal. And I hear that Franklin Armory might have the rights to it. Doesn't look like they're doing anything with it. I've been looking at the Templar Precision, I believe is the company that's kind of carrying some of that on, and just have not been able to bite the bullet on pricing, just because it seems like their parts availability in between runs is really wide. And so this is the long version of, I got excited when the Bren 2 was starting to kind of evolve towards the ACR. PSA came out with the Jackal. That got my attention. And then I was like, shoot, that's PSA. Take a breath there. Let's see what happens with this. It was cool that the original Jackal could run on a standard AR-15 lower. I've got some of those sitting around. I got some Ambi ones sitting around from different companies that would probably work with it. But one of our good friends of the show, Trevor S., for those that know who he is, said, he had one. He had issues with it, and I know a couple of other people that have kind of had some questionable things to say about it. So I held off and bought more night vision stuff, like any responsible gun owner should. And so finally, I was kind of excited when PSA announced the Jackal 2.0, the Mark II, the second generation. And it sounds like they fixed a lot of the original qualms. And there was a lot of fasteners, a lot of hardware that was bolt on, screw on. That's not really great in a gun that's going to see a high round count and get beat around a lot, because it means you are going to go through a lot of this. You're going to end up Loctiting the whole gun, and you're going to reassemble it not knowing what the manufacturing torque specs were. I'm not a fan of that. Most people I know aren't a fan of that. And so with the 2.0, it sounds like they have moved the charging handle back, which is good because it creates more room up front for your hand when it gets set back off of a LAM or laser aiming module for NV work. So that's a good thing. It sounds like they've removed a lot of the unnecessary hardware that was on the original version of the gun. It sounds like they've adjusted the stock and might have made that a little better as well. Original Magpul. But the only downside that I can really tell from the 2.0, just from the videos I've seen of it, is the 2.0 will take a Jackal dedicated lower. You can't put it on a standard AR lower. I understand why they did that. It allowed them to do a little bit more. The downside is the lower, while ambi, is not necessarily true ambi. And what I mean by that, and one of the biggest flaws of all these ambi marketed receivers you see on the market, and then you're going to see my LMT bias come out here. But you can get this from ADM, Griffin, LMT. There's a lot. Actually, Knights just announced that they're switching over to it, is with the ambi controls. If you can see this here, and LMT and some of these other ones, not only can you drop the bolt with your trigger finger, but you have the ability to lock it to the rear. There's now 5 or 6 companies that have a way to do this. Unfortunately, the new Jackal only has the bolt release on the right side or ejection port side. That doesn't appear they've got a bolt lock. So 2.0, I'm excited about. Ambi lower could probably still use a little bit more work, but I'm excited to see where this goes in the future. I still want an ACR. At some point, that itch is going to have to be scratched. Maybe it'll be a Jackal. Maybe it'll be a legitimate ACR. Bushmaster 1 in 9 twist barrels. Sorry. But that's kind of my thoughts. So let's hear your guys', because I know Ryan has gone back and forth on using a BRN 180 upper for NV work, and Tiger, we all know you're into some oddball stuff. So
one thing I wonder, does it look like the Jackal, the bolt release is the same as the AR-15? Like, is it that similar style?
So it looks kind of like the one that's on the older Knights lower, or like the Ford Control Sons of Liberty ones that just came out. That it looks like a long, slender lever that is horizontal in the receiver.
Okay, I just wondering if
on the actual opposite of the ejection port, is that a standard? I don't know. I look more profiles, but I haven't had my hands on one, and all I've seen is glimpses from shot.
Yeah, I just wondering if it was the same, if it was just the same part as an AR-15, you might be able to use one of the ready catch, adapters to little pieces to get that with your magazine release. But yeah, I mean, I see some benefits on piston, but then on the flip side, it starts adding a lot of weight. Like, I don't know that piston is not inherently better than DI. Like, piston's fine. Piston works well. DI's fine. DI works well. Like, sometimes you get less gas blowback in a piston gun, which is nice. But you add a whole lot of weight for that, and if you tune an AR right, and there's a lot of things you can do to keep from getting blowback in your face, and now there's a ton of low back pressure cans. It's like, I think maybe some of the piston craze may die down with that. Because it really adds a lot of weight for. I mean, I don't have any problems with my ARs not cycling correctly because they're DI. So I don't know. It's kind of a neat gun. I think. Well, it's nice. I see they've taken a SIG method of R&D, which is just to beta test your products on your company, on your customers, and then wait for like 2 or 3, like any SIG product, at least guns, wait for like the second or third revision and then buy one because the first 2 are going to have something wrong with it.
Or buy one, find the problem, get 2 or 3 new free guns.
I don't think it works that way. I think you just get stuck with the old one.
Or a SIG, you buy the 320, it discharges into your leg, and then you're in court trying to prove the gun shot you to cover your medical bills.
Yeah, all the defiance of physics from the SIG P320.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about getting one of SIG's hand grenades, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet. I mean, sorry, hand grenade 320, whatever.
Well,
Same difference. Tiger, what do you got next?
Well, I'm gonna kind of bounce off of the Jackal, and then it's your turn. I'm excited for Jackal 2.0. I actually kind of got my hands on a Jackal 1.0 pre-production. I was at a couple of events where they were just kind of rolling it out. I talked to Chad Wiley some about it. I was really excited for it then, just because it was at least different, right? It wasn't just another AR upper, and I really appreciated that. I'm kind of with Mike. I kind of wish they had made it this one. I understand why they didn't, but made it compatible with standard AR-15 lowers. Even if it was a for lack of a better term, adapter kit, to do that. But things I like about the new Jackal is, like Mike said, they moved the charging handle back. That eliminates some of the problems from the 1.0. Also, it puts it where all charging handles should be forever. Like, the FAL fixed the charging handle problem, 75 years ago, and nobody listened. But the only thing I don't like about the new Jackal, and maybe Magpul will fix this, although probably not, that stock, that Ugg boot scar looking fucking stock is got to be the worst stock in the history of the world. It's comfortable. I will say that it's comfortable, but it's heavy, it's ugly, and you can't butt stroke anybody with it because the freaking mechanism for locking it in isn't tight enough to do that with. On any gun I've ever seen that has that style of stock, it's not tight enough. You hit something with it, even if you're mortaring around, the stock will release, and that's not good. But I expect that to be fairly quickly fixed. If the Jackal takes off, PSA is going to release 37 different stocks, and so will all the different Magpul will release 10, and then all the ones that nobody likes to admit they like, the Fabtechs, the Aims, the that look really cool but aren't stocks that people actually run. Harrow release one, whatever. I expect that problem to go away pretty quickly. So,
and on that note, yes, the Ugg boot scar stock is by far one of the most terrible stocks that has ever existed. The original Magpul ACR stock that is now discontinued and selling for ungodly amounts of money, that was pretty bomb-proof.
yeah.
Now, it was interesting because with the first gen Jackal, they kind of done like the Wish.com or whatever version of that stock. The Jackal 2.0 that I saw teased had a visually similar stock, but it looked like there might have been some tweaks done to it.
Yeah, I haven't looked super into it, so.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Like, all I could tell was there was some differences in the mold, and so I don't know if the locking system is different or not. Now, clearly, they should have just paid Magpul to start making the good stock. But, copyrights, royalties, all that fun jazz. But, yeah, with that being said, I agree with Tiger. Like, the stock makes or breaks a modern rifle. So, I digress.
Yeah, and PSA seems really, and I don't say this in a bad way, seems really into making things themselves. I mean, they're making their own ammo now. They're making their own steel cased ammo. Like, I'm not a massive PSA fan. I don't own any of their guns or anything like that. But I will say, like, their AAC ammo, the 77 grain and the 75, has shot really well for me. They had some issues early on. I've heard, but it's like that when you're, when you go from like small production to like scaling up into the big, the big leagues, I guess. You run into that kind of thing. But they've certainly gone.
You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to be honest, like PSA rifles, if you buy a cheap $400 PSA rifle, as long as you put lubricant on it, it's probably going to run. Is it good?
I would go to war with a PSA AR-15 and 3 gallons of lube.
I don't know about that, but is it gonna last like an LMT or URGI? Like, yeah, if we're talking high round count. But to be honest, most people spending $400 on an AR are gonna put 100 rounds to it through a year. If they spent $400 on that, they get $1,000 in ammo, and they shoot that up over the next couple years. They're gonna be better off than buying the Geisley and then never shooting it because they can't afford ammo for it because they blew their wad on, the gun and not the ammo. So, not to, I would say buy the good gun and the ammo, but if it's a this or that, like I guess a $400 gun in the hands of someone that's going to train is better than a $2,000 gun of someone that's not. So it's got its place.
I think Infidelity Daddy did a video on that, and the results supported that pretty well.
Amazing.
That's
great. Well,
top.
Yep. So this is now here's my not pours. This is something I probably will never be able to afford, but Steiner has a new laser. Looks like they're coming out. Laser aiming module. SALAM, like Mike was talking about earlier. It is the Atlas. I guess they're going to have a civilian model they're talking about, probably around $3,000. VXL illuminator, which for those that don't know, the FDA regulates how much power a laser can have. If you go with a traditional LED laser or illuminator in the case, they're pretty boring, or not boring, they're pretty lame. They don't really have, the laser or the illuminators don't really have a lot of punch. You're kind of inside of 100 yards, you're good. If you get out much past that, you're not doing that great. VXL is it's a different kind of laser technology than just your standard LED. I don't know all the, the stuff behind it, but when you use VXL, you can actually have a better illuminator and laser in some cases, but illuminator, and so get more power, but keep it within the FDA regulations. Maybe is that the best way to say it? So
vertical. Yeah.
So looks like $3,000, kind of pricey, but laser aiming modules are pricey. I like to see more options out on the market. This one, looks like it's got a fire button. It looks like it's got 2 other buttons next to it with some other functionality. So the switch, the whole, looks like everything's co-witnessed together in there because there's only like looks like one windage and one elevation turret. So you should be able to just aim everything at one time. I'm imagining probably laser, Viz and IR, and then illuminator. So they'll have those all co-witnessed from the factory. Cool options. It's nice to see. I don't know when the last time Steiner put out a new laser, but the laser aiming module market seems to be picking up, and I like more options, although I still find it hard to believe that they can't make one of these things for less than $3,000. Like the technology in this thing, you can get a Chinese laser pointer that you can do LASIK with for $25 off of Amazon. Like, it's not that much harder, you know. But I digress. So that's my next one. You guys got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So yeah, I'm excited to see where the land market's going, and I agree with Ryan. There's been some very exciting ones. The Steiner one is obviously exciting. The new Hollow Sun one that was teased last year that's actually finally hitting shelves, and it's
And they
nice
were
to.
available. Like, for at least a week, you could go to Primary Arms and buy one. So they just didn't release it and like 5 people got it, no one else could buy it. Like, kudos to Hollow Sun for releasing it to a whole bunch of places in enough mass that like it wasn't just influencers or whoever that got
Yeah.
them. So
Yep.
Yeah, and one of the things I do like with some of the VXL and this new technology, and Ryan and I got to see a little bit of this firsthand with my 2 Steiners, is you end up with a little bit of a petri dish. My Steiner A2 full power has a fairly clean illuminator, but there's still some little spots in it. Versus like my D-ball, like it's clean. It is super clean. Uh, the adjustment on it really lets you tune up for bay matches, and it's still a perfectly viable option for 200. I've watched guys use it for 300-yard targets, and so to see some of the power in a civilian available model have the power of the D-ball, maybe even more in a smaller package, even smaller than like a Steiner A2, A3, is pretty awesome. And so it's great to see this new technology that's giving us this nice, big, clean illuminator without the disco ball effect. We all know Ryan's down to disco, but he does not want his laser to disco. And so, yeah, it's definitely going to be the golden age. I was actually just talking to one of the friends of the show, Andre Cedro, about this, and we talk fairly regularly, and lamps come up for a lot of our conversations. And it's tough because you only have so much money to spend, and you're looking for performance. And these new lasers, well, I picked up my D-ball secondhand, got a really good price on it. The D-ball prices have just started to drop, a couple $100s on the aftermarket, and no regrets about buying it. It's still a very clean unit. I could definitely push it over to one of my other rifles at some point, and maybe put it on something that I'd like to use for hunting, like an SPR, and then put a smaller Holosun or another unit like that on my running gun night vision rifle. It's great to see the options. It's great to see the price point start to come down. And yeah, there's a good chance that maybe I'll pick up one of these smaller models in a year or two. It's nice to not be in a hurry to have to do it, but with the prices coming down, I don't really see a reason not to. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
yeah, because the Iris is like $800 or something like that. I mean, that's what they were selling in LS321, which is a decent lamp, but the light output, it's just a civilian legal LED, so your illuminator's not real solid on that.
I actually priced out the Iris for another friend of the show, Wes. The other day, he was looking for one for his duty rifle, just kind of getting a feel for it. And Holosun does some neat stuff with their map pricing if it's going to police, and it was going to be sub $800 for him to be able to have a laser and illuminator on the end of his duty rifle, which is great. Like you said, that's a fantastic. And the Steiner, you sent the picture earlier today. It looked more like something that I was like. It looked like the civilian market is finally starting to design, whereas the military market is always just engineered, right? Like it's starting to get the smaller footprint, the more contoured lines, the buttons that are easier to find, everything zeroing at one time. So it's got a lot of features on it that I'm hoping will eventually trickle down. I'm not super excited about it because I chose to go thermal. Because I like shooting living things at night instead of steel targets. That's what I want to do. So that's but it is exciting to see kind of where it goes. And I think night vision and thermal, but night vision especially, is becoming significantly more commonplace amongst gun owners in America, which is only a good thing. That's just a good thing. Like we've kind of hit, everybody has a strike fired pistol. Most people have a pretty decent center fire semi-automatic rifle now, and a lot of people are starting to move into the night vision, and the market is coming down to meet them, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things is, like, there's a lot of blue collar guys, your normal gun owning community, that thought they would never be able to touch night vision. I mean, let's see, I really started having the finances and the means to try to get into guns around 2015. That's when I really settled into a really steady blue collar career. And even then, never ever would have thought that I'd have NV, much less NV, 2 illuminators, with maybe in the next few years maybe switching to duals, so my son could run a single 14 when he's older, and then dad's got to have duals or something like that. So it's really awesome to see this technology becoming affordable and commonplace. I mean, I think kid version of Mike would think he's pretty cool. So
yeah,
that's
right.
Well, and that's not even talking about digital night vision, which is not quite there yet, as far as processors and lag
But it's
time
getting closer.
and battery life, but it's getting way closer. So give it 5 more years and Moore's law will have that thing, I would be happy if my kind of traditional, green phosphor, white phosphor night vision was like, if I'd spent that money, it was outdated, and for $1,000 I could get the same thing in digital. Like
Yep.
that would be a problem I'd like to have.
Yeah, same here.
Mike, this should be your last
Whoa. Did you skip me? I think you skipped me.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, Tiger first,
Yep.
buddy.
Yep, Tiger.
So I'm actually going to do a like, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my honorable mentions on my likes. I'm not going to go deep into those. And I'm going to, for my third one, I'm going to pick Athlon is releasing their competitor to the Garmin chronograph. Garmin last year completely upended the chronograph market with their Zero chronograph, and it works. It's beautiful. Everybody I know who owns one loves it. Everybody I know who owns one says they wish they'd bought it sooner. I was actually going to pull the trigger on one about a month ago, and then I had kind of similar thoughts to what Mike was talking about earlier. I thought, let's wait and see what happens at SHOT Show, and I'm glad I did, because this Athlon seems to have most of the same functionality, and it's coming out at supposedly $350 instead of $600 for a brand new one. Now, whether it's as consistent as a Garmin, and maybe not as well built, maybe battery life isn't as good, whatever. However they got it down in price wise, I'm sure there is a quality difference somewhere. Will I notice it? Probably not. Will somebody notice it? Probably. Like I said, I'm just excited to see more people getting into that. For 5 decades, all we had was the Caldwells that you shot through, and then MagnetoSpeed completely changed the game with the rifle-mounted ones, and then Lab Radar completely changed the game with Doppler, but it was really finicky. And then now we're finally getting into where it's all of the reliability of the Caldwells or the MagnetoSpeeds with all of the ease of just set it down and send it. My 2 honorable mentions, which I'm hoping one of you 2 will go deeper into this one, is Shooters Global. They have a rifle mount HUD and glasses HUD that's just incredible. Again, I'm not as super excited about everything going to electronics because, electronics can be beaten really easily and batteries do die, and all of the arguments that people had about red dots on pistols 10 years ago apply now. Um, but it is cool to see. And then the other one is Hornady dropped their 338 ARC round, which isn't super exciting because it's essentially the exact same thing as 8.6 Blackout, only a little bit shorter. And the reason I'm excited that Hornady's doing it is because fuck Kevin Brenningham, all the hell. And also, generally speaking, whenever Hornady releases something, they have enough marketing dollars behind it that if you are an early adopter of any sort, you can at least, they're going to support it at least for a few years to see if it takes off and becomes something really awesome. To decide whether or not it's not just a flash in the pan like some ammo companies are. Hornady does tend to support for at least a couple of years. So, but yeah, there's my last one is the Athlon, and then a couple of honorable mentions there.
Well, so none of Grand Thumb sponsors are sponsoring us anytime soon, and now I'm gonna not be able to get any Q stuff. So
I've
glad we
talked to
took
Kevin personally and told him to go fuck himself in person, so he knows that I am off.
Some friends out in Kansas melted down one of his, I think it was a Thunder Chicken or whatever. One of his cans was supposed to be full auto rated or something along that line, and they're like, eh. And guess what? It was not full auto rated because they have video of that thing puking its guts out. And
to say, did you see the one that they cut in half just
Yeah.
to fish shot? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but anyways, moving on.
Yeah, the new Athlon Chrono is definitely interesting. I think the thing with chronos in general is you're kind of trusting that they're good.
Yeah.
Because unless you have a bunch of them, like unless you're shooting like with a lab radar next to a Garmin, through your magneto speed, through your like old school, like whatever, you're just kind of hoping that whatever number it gives you makes, I mean, usually it makes sense, but like, is it 5 miles per hour or 5 feet per second off or whatever? Like, how do I know?
I actually did that experiment for a grad school assignment. It was the magneto speed, a Caldwell, and the lab radar, and I tested them under a bunch of different circumstances, and they all had points where they failed, like every single one of them. But yeah, you are just trusting that data is good.
What we need, have you guys ever seen the early, Tiger probably has the early, like how they did bullet speed, like chronograph stuff, and it's just a flat plate, like pendulum, basically. Like you shoot this thing, and depending on how far up it goes, and it's got a little thing that just marks the arc, they just do the math. Well, this weight and, this arc, or not, what would that be? What's part of a, but yeah, that's how. So it's way
high speed cameras with the checkered wall.
yeah, but I mean before that, like way back in the day, we're talking like 4570 testing and ballistic testing. It was like just shoot this pendulum and see how far up it goes, and then we know how fast that baby was cooking off. I mean, it's cool stuff. The Athlon tends to, they've made some good moves in the last year. I've used one of their tripods on a hunting trip last year. I haven't got a ton of tripod experience, but like it seemed to work really well for the price. Wasn't too heavy, big old fat legs, the ball head. I mean, there's a lot of opinions on ball heads. There's a lot of different styles. Seemed to work well for me. I mean, they've done a lot of cool things, and this Chrono is a new one. I mean, I could see myself getting one before long. So very cool stuff. The other things, the HUD and all the electronics, like I said, smash all the looms. Let's get rid of technology. I've got a typewriter in a Montana cabin I'm looking to go send some mail from here. So
Jesus Christ.
I'm working on the beard. And there's our FBI agent is gonna be
Hi, NSA.
just hit a new list. Mike, before
Casper Nick is our NSA guy.
Mike, you fill us what you think of that, and then you can go on to your next one.
So my final one was actually going to be the Chrono, and I didn't particularly label one of them. But the cool thing is that several different companies came out with the radar-based chronographs this year. So I believe Caldwell has one. The one that Tiger just mentioned, and then of course you still got Lab Radar. You got Garmin. So now you got 4 options at a minimum, and the price point to get into it has come down a lot. So the Garmin's were hardly able to stay in stock. If you could find one for less than $500, you were doing good, even secondhand. And I think that's going to change because of the price point and availability. Yes, will the cheaper ones potentially have the accuracy and be able to have the repeatability? I don't know. We'll do a gauge R&R on it. But for majority of like what Ryan and I are doing, just taking a 5.56 rifle and wanting to get good enough data that we could hit a 24-inch steel plate at 600 yards, or let's say Hunter's Moon, and the plate is the size of a Ford Ranger hood at 1,000 yards. Will one of the cheaper chronographs get us there? If we fire 5-10 rounds over it, take an average, maybe between 2 different outings, yeah, it's going to do it. Now, is your PS or your PRS guy going to have the accuracy that he's looking from one of the cheaper units? Well, it's yet to be determined. Right now, we've got no reason to say particularly no. But hey, if he wants to splurge for one of the more expensive ones because it delivers the results the PRS competitor needs, then go for it. I know that my magneto speed is going to go up for sale because I had the really unique opportunity due to one of our sponsors and friends of the show at CB Guns, Dustin Croop. He gave Ryan and I, well, me, because I was the one that begged and smiled and pleaded. He gave us his Garmin to use, and it was supposed to be just for chronographing hunting ammo in November. And I still haven't got it back to him. Sorry, Dustin. But yeah, he knows where to find it. But it really changed how quickly you could gather chronograph data from multiple guns, none of the setup. Now I want to chronograph my 357 hunting ammo for a rifle over my handgun to decide how's that going to work out of a 3-inch revolver for bear defense in Michigan this summer picking blueberries. Well, doing that with the magneto speed would be a royal pain in the butt. I actually don't even know if you could. Well, with the Garmin, easy peasy. We can do that, and then 30 seconds later be chronographing an AR, and 30 seconds later after that be chronographing the 22. So yeah, the future is looking bright for the chronographs, and I'm very excited. That's probably I try to map out what my big purchases will be for the year, and my 3 potential big purchases is potentially the new Staccato, potentially one of the new radar-based chronographs, and then maybe a digital powder drop. So that's kind of what I'm looking at is probably the big spenders for the year. And 2 of those things really had more options open up because of SHOT Show. The Staccato, because originally it was, do I want a platypus? And now I've got options there. And then the potential for a new chronograph with 4 options there instead of 1 or 2. So very cool. That's a huge win for us as shooters. I believe that we are seeing a generation of shooters come about that is more intelligent. And what I mean is, yes, all of us have. I would say you haven't lived until you've magged or things that every gun owner needs to experience and check off the box. And shooting trash piles is definitely part of it. But on average, I'd say the modern gun owner is more informed and more technologically advanced and wants to be. And this new generation of technology with the chronographs, the shooter's global technology, things like that coming out allows us and someone that, I'd say everyone here tonight is a nerd at some level and loves data. Tiger's a data guy. Ryan's a data guy. I'm a data guy. I do it for a living. And for me to be able to pull data and get good, clean, consistent data at my fingertips just lets me completely nerd out. Now, it doesn't always make sense on the reloading bench because I'll tell you, I'll try to use that data and it does not work out as I plan. But
you need more black magic.
To be able to get it at least, yeah. There's still a lot of voodoo in reloading. I'm learning that, but to be able to get good, consistent results that I would expect in my professional life in manufacturing from my hobby metrology equipment like a chronograph is fantastic. And I think that we're going to continue to see a smarter and more informed group of shooters because of this technology becoming more and more available at our fingertips. So, and honestly, there's going to be a point where someone smart and savvy is going to set up a chronograph, a couple Garmin's, and a shooting bay at a running gun match, and you're going to pay a couple bucks to your rifle and your loads right there. Just think, if you got a ballistic solver like a modest and show up to Hunter's Moon in Missouri, and I can pay the match director a couple bucks to step over. Drawser, you better be listening. I can pay the match director a couple bucks to step over and chronograph at my current altitude and atmospherics, and then I can plug that into my ballistic solver before I go for my run. Boom, more accurate information for my match. So yeah, there's something to consider. All this stuff is going to change, and I'm excited to see where it takes us. I remember the first time that I shot a 3-gun match, and I did a 5200 0 on a red dot. And then I went to a pro-am at Rock Castle, and I had my first target at 300 yards. Guess what? I was pretty good out until about 300 yards at the red dot. And that's where I was just all around the target. And in hindsight, it was probably my maturity level as a shooter more than the gun. The gun was very capable. The gentleman that got me into the 3-gun proved that it was a very capable setup. But I remember being like, I don't really know what is the bullet doing at 300? And we all at some point in our lives, at least those that were born in the 90s and previously, pulled out a box of ammo. Like, here's a Federal box, and it says muzzle velocity 100 yards 2640, 300 yards 2080, 1400 1830. And we tried to make assumptions about where our rounds were going to impact based on this. Well, guess what? Federal chronographed this at their range with unknown atmospherics with a 24-inch bolt action or something like that. And now I'm at a 3-gun match trying to use gold medal match at a buck plus a shot to hit something at 300 or 400 yards based off of the information on the back of the box. It didn't work. And I think that we've got a whole generation of shooters that will never get to really experience how badly that didn't work. But that's a good thing, and I'm really excited for that. So that's my little rant. You can thank Woodford Reserve for that.
I was going to ask who, oh my goodness, you went on there. So, but that is something to be said.
He said lots of words for sure.
You did.
One second, Ryan. One thing about the new radar chronographs, the Dopplers, that Mike didn't mention, maybe Ryan was going to, I don't know. I've had quite a bit of tequila and a few beers now. You talk about PRS guys. Yeah, you talk about the PRS guys. I know several of them that have them, and they literally just set it up every single range trip. Like my one buddy that I go shoot with quite a bit, he has actually documented how his AR because he runs the carbine for the sniper matches, how his AR velocities change from round 1 in a mag to round 30 in a mag in under a minute, because the round 30 is a little bit faster. So he knows that shift. So just the ease of use has allowed us to actually gather, real data, as opposed to 5-round groups, 3-round groups, whatever we used to do with chronographs. So I just wanted to mention that. Ryan, go ahead, get in while Mike's not here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, because if you're just shooting over a chronograph, how many rounds can you afford to can you do 30 rounds? Just you're shooting over it, because if you're trying to aim at a target and do other things, it usually doesn't work out real well. So
But the new certainly one does.
Yeah, but the new ones, you're not shooting over them. So you right. Can just do whatever. I'm saying with it, chronographs, I always that was the main thing. You weren't trying to hit targets. You weren't worried about other stuff. You were worried about shooting it wherever it needed to pick it up accurately. And so, we'll try to speed up here a little bit. So my next one, for my last one, is it's another optic, the Burris Fastfire E. Didn't see a whole lot about this, but Burris has a enclosed emitter. Think like Acro, Holosun 509, like mailbox style optic. Looks like it could be a decent option. It uses the Acro footprint, which is nice to hear. I mean, if you're putting out a dot, I know Glock and who makes Acro? Aimpoint just came out with the new.
Who's making another Acro footprint dot?
The Fastfire E. So Burris. Yeah, I'll have a picture up on this. Yeah, Burris Fastfire E. So mailbox style enclosed emitter, uses the Acro footprint. Again, if you're making a new footprint in 2025, you better have a really, really good reason for it. And in this case, the Acro, the crossbolt is a pretty solid design. The MSRP, so the MSRP is $420, which means your street price is probably $300, $350, probably. I mean,
probably between $300 and $325.
Yeah, so that's pretty good price if this holds up. I have to imagine this is made to go on a pistol. So early on, I would say 4 years ago, when they first started putting dots on pistols, it was kind of like not if, but when your dot was going to die. And everyone loves RMRs, but guess what? The first generation RMRs didn't really do much better. You had flickers, I got to put a different plate underneath it, a little spacer. They had issues too. So they were certainly a good optic, and still at the time they were the leader of the class. Nowadays, if you get a quality dot optic, I don't hear about dots dying at the rate they did early on.
Right.
Certainly if you shoot enough, you abuse them, things happen. They do die. We've had friends kill. We have a friend that's killed 2 or 3 Acro glasses. They've been replaced.
God bless
I know. They still work. They still work.
As classic a Marine as they come.
Yes. They still work, but but yeah, I mean, dots do die. Don't get me wrong. It's an electronic piece. It's man-made, but it's just not at the level that they were 4 years ago when they first came out. So I imagine this is probably going to be a pretty solid choice if you're looking for a dot, and even consider, even if it's not a pistol, like a small enclosed emitter is a great offset dot for a rifle. So I'm looking forward to picking one of those up. I'm a mild Burris fan. I've not owned a bunch of Burris stuff, but they do seem to make a pretty good optic. I think they need to work on their marketing, because people just don't talk about them, and it's not really because their product's not good. They just don't. I don't know. I don't think they market themselves to the right people. So maybe we need to help fix that. I don't know. So we're gonna go into this.
Sounds like New show sponsor.
Yeah, exactly. We've said a lot of nice things about them tonight. So
Yeah. I mean, and also they, in addition to putting out really great products, they do support the shooting sports. They supported Zombie 3 or 4 years. I know they've done several 3-gun matches, PRS matches. So they do support the sports. So please, if you've never considered a burst, please go consider them.
yeah, you got their contact, Tiger. See what we can get.
That guy actually moved to, I think he works at Steiner now. I learned I learned as a match director that the turnover in the gun industry is insane.
Yeah. So that was our hot section.